While the Galactic Civil War seemed won by the Rebel Alliance at the Battle of Endor, the Empire's remnants continued to resist the New Republic's advances. Operation Cinder was conceived by Emperor Palpatine long before his death. This Scorched Earth campaign was designed to leave the Empire's worlds in ruin. Fueled by the Empire's desire to deny his enemies the satisfaction of his Empire's remnants, the Emperor's message was clear. If he could not rule, then neither would the galaxy prosper from his Empire's ashes. Upon Palpatine's death, members of an elite faction known as the Sentinels activated Operation Cinder. These Sentinels were robotic enforcers programmed with Palpatine's last commands, bearing his likeness to strike fear and obedience into the remaining Imperial officers. They delivered orders to deploy climate-manipulating satellites on various planets, sparking massive environmental devastation. These satellites generated destructive weather patterns, hurricanes, earthquakes, and electrical storms that ravaged ecosystems, cities, and infrastructures. Operation Cinder indiscriminately targeted both New Republic strongholds and Imperial loyal worlds, causing mass devastation across the galaxy. Planets such as Naboo, Vardos, and Burnin Khan suffered some of the worst effects. Naboo, the Emperor's own homeworld, faced torrential storms and wildfires, devastating its people and beautiful landscapes. Vardos, a loyal Imperial planet that had been steadfast in its devotion to Palpatine's rule, marked a turning point for a lot of Imperials. When Operation Cinder was ordered on Vardos, even fiercely loyal Imperial officers began to question Palpatine's intentions, as it became clear that his loyalty had never been to the Empire or its people, but solely to his own power. This disillusionment fractured the remaining Imperial forces. Some Imperial loyalists, like Iden Versio of the Inferno Squad, defected to the New Republic, realizing that Palpatine's vision of control was one of self-destruction rather than loyalty to the Empire's citizens. As Operation Cinder wreaked havoc, the New Republic intensified its campaign to eliminate the Empire's remaining strongholds. These efforts culminated in the Battle of Jakku, the final, decisive showdown of the Galactic Civil War. By this time, Jakku had become the rallying point for the last organized forces of the Empire, which had amassed an impressive fleet and military presence in a final bid to resist the New Republic. Located in the Outer Rim, Jakku was an unlikely setting for such an important battle. It was a remote, desert-covered backwater planet that held little strategic value. However, Imperial leadership chose it as their final stronghold, in part to retreat as far from the New Republic's core systems as possible, hoping to make a stand where the enemy's reach was weakest. The battle over Jakku was an epic clash, as both the New Republic and the Empire understood that this confrontation would decide the fate of the galaxy. Fighting raged both in space and on the desert sands of Jakku. In orbit, massive Star Destroyers clashed with New Republic capital ships, filling the sky with fiery wreckage and twisted metal. However, as the fight raged on, the Super Star Destroyer Ravager, the flagship of the Imperial fleet, was destroyed by the New Republic. The Ravager's loss marked the end of the battle and the effective collapse of the Empire's fighting force. As the Empire's fleet crumbled under the New Republic's superior coordination and strategy, several Star Destroyers crashed onto Jakku's surface, creating the iconic Graveyard of Giants. The barren deserts became littered with enormous wrecks, including the remains of Imperial and New Republic ships alike. These wrecks would remain on Jakku for decades, serving as haunting relics of the Empire's last stand and a source of scavenger livelihood in the years to come. With the New Republic victorious, the Empire was left in ruins, its leadership fractured and demoralized. Shortly after the battle, Imperial officers were brought to the negotiating table, resulting in the signing of the Galactic Concordance. This peace treaty officially ended the Galactic Civil War, and its terms imposed severe limitations on the remnants of the Empire. Among the most notable terms, the Empire agreed to disarm and disband much of its military, as well as abandon claims to certain territories. The New Republic imposed a strict ban on any military buildup by Imperial forces and prohibited the use of symbols associated with the Empire. The New Republic, now victorious, found itself in a difficult position. Though it had brought peace to the galaxy, the scars left by the Empire's collapse and Operation Cinder meant that many worlds remained in disrepair. The Republic also faced the challenge of uniting a galaxy still reeling from the Empire's reign and devastated by years of war. Following the Empire's defeat at the Battle of Jakku in 5 ABY, the New Republic achieved a significant victory, signaling the official end of the Imperial rule. The subsequent Galactic Concordance peace treaty imposed severe restrictions on the Empire, limiting its military capabilities and restricting it to the select territories within the galaxy's inner rim. Recognizing the destruction caused by the Empire's centralization of military power, the New Republic was committed to decentralization, dismantling much of its military forces and allowing individual star systems more autonomy. This policy aimed to prevent the rise of another authoritarian regime, but it also left the New Republic unprepared for potential threats. Many senators believed that centralized power would only breed future conflict, while others, led by pacifist factions, argued that diplomacy alone could maintain peace. Following the Empire's formal defeat, a faction of Imperial hardliners refused to surrender, maintaining hostility toward the New Republic and initiating a prolonged Cold War, occupying worlds that didn't want to be reintegrated into the New Republic. While no major conflicts erupted, tensions persisted due to unresolved resentment from the Galactic Civil War. Over time, this Imperial remnant began to colonize the unknown regions. These loyalists took advantage of the disarray following Operation Cinder, using hidden bases, stockpiles of weapons, and Palpatine's carefully prepared infrastructure to organize the First Order, a militarized regime rooted in the ideologies of the old Empire and set on reasserting Imperial dominance. Under the leadership of Supreme Leader Snoke, a dark and enigmatic figure whose origins were shrouded in mystery, the First Order was determined to restore what they saw as rightful control over the galaxy. Snoke capitalized on the disillusionment felt by former Imperial officers, soldiers, and citizens who had suffered under the New Republic's at times ineffectual governance. This support allowed the First Order to recruit fervently loyal followers, committed to reclaiming their former dominance. A promise of return to order and strength. They developed cutting-edge starships, weapons, and systems of control, including the fearsome Stormtrooper Corps, re-engineered as an elite, highly indoctrinated military force trained from childhood to serve the Order without question. The First Order also started developing a formidable fleet, larger and more advanced than the New Republic could have anticipated. In the New Republic Senate, the prospect of a revitalized empire was often dismissed, and reports of the First Order's activities were frequently downplayed as the exaggerated concerns of warhawks and Imperial nostalgics. This lack of urgency allowed the First Order to operate largely unchecked, while Snoke's agents used political and economic influence to further divide the New Republic's leadership. Many senators prioritized economic prosperity and regional stability, opposing any moves that would revive the military. In contrast, Leia Organa, a war hero and former senator, recognized the First Order's growing threat long before most. Leia's insights stemmed from her experiences as a leader in the Rebel Alliance and her encounters with various Imperial holdouts. When her warnings were ignored by the New Republic Senate, Leia and some Old Alliance members established a resistance, a loosely organized independent militia composed of former Rebel veterans, sympathizers, and young idealists. Funded through private backers and organized by a skeleton leadership, the resistance served as an unofficial defense force against the First Order. Leia's decision was controversial, creating friction within the New Republic's political landscape. Some viewed the resistance as an unnecessary provocation that would only draw the galaxy back to war. Over time, Leia's foresight proved valuable, as resistance operatives uncovered increasingly alarming evidence of the First Order's military growth and ambitions. However, Leia's reputation within the Senate was severely undermined when her parentage as the daughter of Darth Vader was publicly exposed, causing many to question her motivations and reinforcing resistance to her warnings. The Cold War period was marked by intelligence gathering and occasional skirmishes in remote star systems, as the Resistance and First Order both operated below the radar of New Republic's attention. Resistance pilots conducted dangerous reconnaissance missions, gathering critical intelligence about the First Order's military activities in the unknown regions. Despite mounting evidence gathered by the Resistance showing that the First Order was violating the Galactic Concordance through militarization, the New Republic remained largely indifferent. The Senate, influenced by pacifists and isolationists, resisted proposals to establish a robust defense program, often dismissing the Resistance as alarmist. The prevailing view was that the era of galactic wars had ended with the Empire, and that any attempt to escalate defenses would lead to unnecessary expenses or destabilize regional peace. This complacency proved disastrous, as the First Order gradually reached a position of absolute strength, unhindered by external interference. Behind closed doors, Supreme Leader Snoke and his commanders prepared for open war, confident that the New Republic was unprepared for a renewed galactic conflict. By 34 ABY, the Cold War reached a breaking point as the First Order's leadership judged that their forces were ready to strike. The finalization of the construction of Starkiller Base, a superweapon capable of destroying entire star systems, signaled that the First Order no longer intended to hide. The Resistance War, also known as the First Order Resistance War, erupted in 34 ABY with a destructive attack on the New Republic, throwing the galaxy into chaos and reigniting large-scale galactic warfare. Starkiller Base, a technological marvel and a devastating weapon, was engineered by the First Order in secret within the planet Ilum. Capable of harnessing and unleashing the power of a star, Starkiller Base fired a single cataclysmic blast that obliterated the entire Hosnian system in moments. Billions of lives were lost, including high-ranking officials, military personnel, and civilians from every part of the Republic. This catastrophic event effectively wipes the New Republic's central government off the galaxy. News of the attack spread quickly, instilling widespread fear and chaos. Star systems that had aligned themselves with the New Republic faced an uncertain future without a governing body or standing military to protect them. Many worlds, especially those on the Republic's outer reaches, felt isolated and defenseless as the First Order began to seize control over key trade routes, resources, and strategic planets. Realizing the gravity of the situation, General Leia Organa quickly mobilized the Resistance. Comprised of former Rebel Alliance veterans, pilots, technicians, and a new generation of fighters, the Resistance was a relatively small, loosely organized force compared to the First Order's massive military. But with the entirety of the New Republic government obliterated, they were the galaxy's last line of defense. Knowing that they were outmatched in both numbers and resources, Leia and her commanders decided to likely have to rely on guerrilla tactics, intelligence operations, and covert alliances with sympathetic planetary systems, just like in the days of the Rebel Alliance. The Resistance's first critical victory came when they destroyed Starkiller Base itself. A daring assault led by Han Solo, Chewbacca, a young Jedi named Rey, and a former Stormtrooper Finn, who managed to infiltrate the base, disable its defenses, and allow Resistance X-Wings to strike a fatal blow, resulting in the base's destruction. This victory provided a temporary reprieve from the First Order's overwhelming firepower, but came at the cost of Han Solo's life, a loss that would reverberate through the ranks of the Resistance. Following the destruction of Starkiller Base, the First Order retaliated swiftly, forcing the Resistance to evacuate their primary base on the planet Dakar. Under relentless pursuit by the First Order fleet, the Resistance narrowly escaped, though their forces suffered heavy losses. During this period, the First Order revealed a new technological advantage, a hyperspace tracking system, which allowed their fleet to follow the Resistance even through hyperspace. This constant chase marked the start of a grueling and desperate period for the Resistance, as they were hounded across the galaxy by the First Order with limited resources and few places to seek refuge. With fuel reserves dwindling and Leia in a coma due to a previous attack, internal conflicts arose over command decisions from Admiral Holdo. Ultimately, she sacrificed herself to cripple the First Order flagship in a desperate maneuver known as the Holdo Maneuver, helping the Resistance escape to the abandoned base on Crate. On Crate, they made a last stand in an abandoned Rebel Alliance base. Outnumbered and cornered, the Resistance forces prepared to face the full might of the First Order. The First Order deployed AT-M6 walkers and a massive ground assault force, intent on crushing the Resistance once and for all. In this dire hour, hope arrived in the form of Luke Skywalker, who projected himself through the Force across the galaxy to confront the new Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, who had just previously killed Snoke, buying time for the Resistance to escape through hidden tunnels. Although Luke's sacrifice allowed the Resistance to flee, their numbers had dwindled to only a few dozen by the end of the battle. The survivors escaped aboard the Millennium Falcon, realizing that they would have to rebuild from scratch if they were to continue the fight. Despite this, Luke's sacrifice became a rallying symbol of hope for the galaxy, and news of his heroic stand began to inspire others to resist the First Order. As the Resistance licked its wounds, it became clear that the threat of the First Order extended beyond Supreme Leader Snoke and Kylo Ren. A new and darker power revealed itself in the form of Emperor Palpatine, who had somehow survived his apparent death and was secretly building an even greater threat on the hidden world of Exagol. Here, in the unknown regions, Palpatine amassed the Sith Eternal Fleet, a colossal armada of Star Destroyers equipped with planet-destroying weapons, each capable of annihilating entire worlds. It turns out that Palpatine had been behind Snoke the whole time, and that he had orchestrated the rise of the First Order as well. The Sith Eternal fleet was the culmination of Palpatine's long-term vision, with each Star Destroyer prepared to enforce a new era of Sith domination across the galaxy. Exagol became the focal point of the Resistance's final campaign. They realized that if they could not defeat Palpatine and his fleet, the galaxy would face a new Dark Age, one far worse than the Empire had imposed. With the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance, the Resistance launched a desperate assault on Exagol. This attack only being possible through the guidance of Rey, who had trained under both Leia and the ghost of Luke Skywalker. Rey led the charge against Palpatine himself, armed with a combined strength and knowledge of past Jedi. Meanwhile, Poe Dameron and the Resistance fleet coordinated a battle above Exagol, with the last remnants of the Resistance and allies from various systems arriving in a final united stand against the Sith Eternal fleet. The battle was fierce and chaotic, as Resistance pilots fought the Sith fleet while Rey confronted Palpatine on the planet's surface. Using the power of the Jedi who came before her, Rey, with the help of a turned Kylo Ren, ultimately defeated Palpatine, ending his influence over the galaxy for a final time. She barely survived the encounter, but was ultimately saved by the sacrifice of Ben Solo, who redeemed himself in his final moments by transferring his life force to save her life. With the destruction of the Sith Eternal fleet and Palpatine's final defeat, the First Order was